Get ahead of postage rate increases this year with Stamps.com. It's like your own personal post office. Sign up with promo code PROGRAM for a 4-week trial plus free postage and a free digital scale. No long-term commitments or contracts. That's Stamps.com, code PROGRAM.
The Tea Biz podcast delivers tea news that you need to know. A recap of the week's major headlines with commentary and cultural trends hosted by Dan Bolton. It is the voice of origin for tea professionals and enthusiasts worldwide.
Think of us as a digital caravan of storytellers, bringing authentic, authoritative, and exclusive stories to you weekly from the tea lands. Hello, everyone. Here are this week's headlines. Sri Lanka tea yields feared to decline. McLeod Russel settlement resolves its insolvency, and the Bangladesh tea sector returns to pre-pandemic production levels. More in a minute, but first, this important message.
What makes a perfect cup of Ceylon tea? The perfect cup is from the tea businesses that ensure the protection of all the children living within their tea estates. We salute Kailani Valley, Telawakili, Bogawanthalawa, Harana, and Elliptia tea estates. Support Save the Children, Sri Lanka.
Sri Lankan tea growers are experiencing the first effects of the countrywide ban on chemical fertilizer and plant production chemicals. After a productive spring, the fall harvest is predicted to decline beginning in October. Herman Gunarutne, one of 46 experts picked by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to guide the transition to organic-only inputs, told Agence Presse France that he fears the ban has drawn the tea industry into complete disarray. Gunarutne, who manages the Ahangama tea estate, said, quote, "The consequences for the country are unimaginable." Gunarutne was removed from the Green Socio-Economic Task Force after disagreeing with the president, according to AFP. President Gotabaya ordered a halt in inbound shipments of fertilizers last May used to cultivate food crops such as rice and cash crops, including cinnamon and pepper. Growers are concerned that plants accustomed to a rich diet of nitrogen and phosphate will take time to adjust to organic compost and manure. Tea is the nation's highest-earning export, generating $1.25 billion in foreign currency from the sale of 300 million kilos annually. Sri Lanka harvested 188 million kilos through July. Mid-year crop yields were 20% ahead of the half-year mark set in 2020, but prices on average were higher last year. Meanwhile, the fiscal crisis facing the country worsened as the Sri Lankan rupee depreciated 20% against the U.S. dollar and British pound. Food inflation is at 11.5%, and long queues at food markets signal shortages. The government has invoked rules that fix prices and prohibit hoarding of staples such as paddy, finished rice, and sugar, which briefly increased to 200 rupees per kilo. Sri Lanka's economy, heavily dependent on tourism, declined 3.6% in 2020, and foreign reserves are at record lows. Biz Insight. During the next month, Tea Biz will interview several key decision-makers, tea researchers, and non-government agricultural experts to discuss the pros and cons of switching Sri Lanka to organic-only cultivation. India's largest bulk tea producer has settled with creditors to resolve its financial peril. P.P. Gupta, Managing Director of Techno-Electric and Engineering, agreed to terms for repayment of a delinquent 100 crore, that's $14 million U.S., loan by McLeod Russel India, saying, quote, "This is now behind us, and we wish the company good luck," end quote. Techno triggered the insolvency August 6 by filing a formal application with the National Company Law Tribunal for redress. McLeod borrowed the funds in 2018 and failed to make timely payments due to shortfall in revenue from tea. The company sold several tea gardens to meet its obligations, but the sums were insufficient to satisfy creditors. McLeod currently owes its lenders approximately 1,800 crore, about $245 million. A resolution process led by the Reserve Bank of India will now proceed. McLeod operates 31 tea estates in Assam and 2 in West Bengal, producing a combined 44 million kilos of tea annually in India, with additional holdings in Africa and Vietnam. Like neighboring Assam, Bangladesh experienced a spring drought, high temperatures, and the onslaught of the pandemic, but production is ahead of 2020 totals and estimated to reach pre-pandemic levels of 96 million kilos. The International Tea Committee in London ranks Bangladesh 9th among the tea-producing countries. The industry there employs 300,000, including 5,000 smallholders. Mohammed Musa, manager at Finley Tea Consolidated Tea Plantations in Bangladesh, writes that, quote, plantation work never stopped during the pandemic. Workers were kept isolated in the tea estates itself, and there were many more safety programs. Government support was encouraging, which really enabled plantations to continue running of the tea activities safely during the pandemic, end quote. Cyrus Faizi, executive director at Faizi Tea Estate, reports that the first 7 months of the year brought favorable weather. Tea production has been consistently increasing thanks to the favorable weather and initiatives undertaken by the Tea Board, he writes. The distribution of fertilizer at subsidized prices started in the gardens at the right time this year, Faizi explains. Bangladesh is a net tea importer. The growers there are optimistic, he writes. Quote, old saplings have been removed and new saplings have been planted. The tea planters have increased the scope of tea cultivation by making new investments, he writes, adding, if the trend of increasing production continues like this time, then there will be no need to import tea in large quantities. Business Insight. Tea producers in Bangladesh are now at a crossroads, according to Faizi. Improving their marketing performance in both the domestic and export markets has become crucial for survival and growth. Quote, the tea sector has lost its name and fame in recent years, he says, but in light of such challenges, strategies have been adopted in the coming year to meet the demand for tea in the domestic as well as the global market. Aravinda Anantharaman in Bengaluru reports on India's tea auction prices.
India Tea Price Report for the week ending 4th September 2021. Sale 35 was largely uneventful. Prices remained similar to the previous week. The market was steady with better demand in North India. In the south, prices were better than Sale 34 for orthodox tea across Kannur, Coimbatore and Kochi, but percentage of sales was lower. On the other hand, dust prices were lower than the previous week, but here too the percentage of sales was lower. Guwahati saw good demand for both leaf and dust teas. A comparison of prices for Sale 35 across 2019, 2020 and 2021 places 2021 between the last 2 years. Among the top buyers, Tata Consumer Products was active for both leaf and dust, while Hindustan Unilever was active for dust teas. There were fewer outlots this week. Kolkata saw good demand for all teas, particularly orthodox. The major blenders were active. Tata Consumer Products and exporters were active for Darjeeling tea. Prices remained similar to the previous week with the exception of Darjeeling, whose average price dropped by about 40 rupees. There were fewer outlots of whole leaf and brokens compared to fannings and secondary teas. This week we also caught up with representatives of the South India Tea Exporters Association, represented by the Chairman Deepak Shah, Vice Chairman Ronnie Tarakan and other members. They pointed out the twin problems that have been relentless this year. One is the rising cost of ocean freight coupled with non-availability of containers, which makes them apprehensive to take even future orders. The second is the problem of pesticides in tea. Members also spoke of changes in export subsidies and the impact on this problem, along with the challenges of competing with producers who are directly exporting to buyers. As things stand, they say we're looking at the last quarter of the year closing with unsold tea once again.
And now, a word from our sponsor.
Q Trade Teas works with tea purveyors at every scale, from promising startups to the world's largest multinational beverage brands in the hot, iced, and bottled tea segments. With U.S.-based formulation, blending, and packaging services, Q Trade can help you innovate, scale up, and grow your specialty tea brand. For more information, visit our website, qtradeteas.com.
This week, Tea Biz visits with rare tea lady Henrietta Lovell, whose passion for tea is exceeded only by her commitment to bettering the lives of those who make it. And then we travel to Banbury, UK to learn how the Tea History Collection is digitizing tea history one tome at a time. Since founding the Rare Tea Company in London in 2004, Henrietta Lovell has traveled the globe sourcing direct for the world's 5-star dining rooms and developing relationships at the farm level, where her commitment to fair pricing for the finest tea and charitable work set a standard. If I can make people appreciate tea, it will change the world, she says.
Having read Henrietta Lovell's fabulously engaging book, Infused, Adventures in Tea, earlier this year with Tea Book Club, I jumped at the chance to chat to Henrietta, the tea person, founder of Rare Tea Company, mistress of the artful blend, and champion of tea farmers. Join me as the Rare Tea lady spills the tea. I'm fascinated about the moment someone gets tea. What has been your experience of this?
And it's very interesting if they've already got a preconception of what tea is. It is harder. So if I've got a young person and they don't have a very firm, fixed preconception, they might be a little bit more fluid, a bit more open to experiencing new things. So then it's like, oh, I'd love to try. And then, oh, this is amazing. This is delicious. But when someone's got a very strong opinion beforehand, then it's a really wonderful revelation, because you know that you're not just making someone fall in love, you're making them change an established thought pattern, and it's super exciting. But I don't really do it. The tea does it. I've got a very privileged position where people will trust me enough now to try things, and it's just absolutely wonderful. They think they know what they like, and then they have a taste of something that just starts to excite them, and it's like, oh, okay. But their still face is completely closed, and they're generally quite silent because they've got nothing to add to. They're just there because they've been dragged in. And then the face softens, the body language softens, and the sort of joy starts to creep into the faces, because pleasure is a joy. Let's not forget, it's not just amazing flavors. It's really a sense of euphoria that overcomes you when you discover something that is so beautiful and so joyous.
So is there one tea that really captures people?
Obviously, we will have very different tastes and flavor profiles that we enjoy most. But interestingly, it's often either an English breakfast or a jasmine tea, because we know those teas very well. And the experience is so extraordinarily wonderful, because you think you know something and then it's opened out to you. The jasmine silvertip can be something because it's so clean and bright and fresh, and it's scented with jasmine flowers. There's no flavouring on there. This is just the flowers have given up their scent and it's been absorbed into the tea. That is such an extraordinary experience. And it's so extraordinary. They're sort of like, I know this, but I don't know it. And they feel quite discombobulated at first and then very joyous. And then the other thing is to do an English breakfast with an industrial tea bag English breakfast, and then an English breakfast made of beautiful teas crafted to be something better than the sum of its parts. You try them side by side, and then there's this revelation, because you've probably drunk that industrial tea bag tea every day of your life, maybe 6 times a day. And then you have something that is remarkably better. You're like, shit, what have I been missing out on my whole life? And that can be a little bit hurtful. You can't argue with your taste buds. So when your taste buds say, oh my God, this is better, you have to just let go of the past and the shame and the blame or whatever it is, and just go, okay, the world is opened out. whatever their taste background, whatever their profession, whether they're a taxi driver or a famous chef or a sommelier, everybody can taste the difference. So it's much more accessible. It's just having that first sip.
You work directly with farms. What is it about working directly that is so important to you?
There's real people here, and we're all connected, that sense of community, responsibility to one another. And I think that's how we make real change in the tea world, is that connection, that these are people, this is a community, this is a farm. And that's the thing, not this is the name of the varietal. Like, who made this tea rather than what varietal is made? What's your relationship with them, and are they okay? Yeah. Or are they at least trying to make it okay? And this is something I really wanted to mention. Often people speak about farms that produce specialty tea and non-specialty tea. And like, well, if the person who's picking the tea is paid the same for both, well, then that's not fair, really, because then the value of that specialty tea is not getting to the picker. And this is not okay. And we shouldn't really work with commercial farms that are producing non-specialty tea. There is not a problem with supply in the tea world for specialty tea. There is a problem with demand. That is the problem, right? So it's our job to try and spread the demand and to educate people and to show people that there's a reason and a value for buying more expensive tea. But if a farm is trying to come out of a world where they've been reliant on selling commodity tea, cheaper tea, because that's where the market was, we can't punish them when they're trying to then create specialty tea. And this makes me so mad. Like, and when you talk about wages and you say, well, I shouldn't work with a farm where the wages are low, how are they going to improve the wages if we don't buy more specialty tea? You know, we need to work with these guys. We need to understand them. We need to have relationships. Say, how do you get so that, like, working in a farm in Malawi, wages are low, life expectancy is low, standard of living is low. How do we make a difference there? How do we do it differently? And it's not by only working with a tiny smallholder or a tiny farm that just makes specialty tea. That's part of the solution, but it's not the only solution.
The Tea History Collection in Banbury, UK, founded by Dennis Shortt, OBE, has hosted a full calendar of events since opening in May. This tea industry resource is now undertaking the daunting task of digitizing bound volumes recording the trademark and ownership of colonial gardens from the early days of tea. Listen as Shortt discusses the importance of preserving tea company heritage to be shared online by all.
Behind every sip of tea, there is the taste of history. This is Delanja Silva from PM David Silver & Sons, and earlier this year I visited the Tea History Collection set up by Mr. Dennis Shortt in Banbury in rural England. Dennis is the founder and chairman of DCS Group, a multi-million-pound distribution company. He's also the son of an Assam tea planter, having been born and spending his formative years on Indian tea gardens. Dennis's passion for tea and history has resulted in a unique collection of tea-related items that are now housed in a purpose-built facility. I sit down to talk about this unique facility, some of the memorable pieces from the collection, and why is it important to preserve this history. The collection houses some very unique and interesting pieces of tea memorabilia. What are some of the standout pieces that visitors will find interesting, and what are some of the pieces that you personally found fascinating learning about?
I've pulled some pieces together sort of around me, and they're very random, but I think people find them interesting. The first one is a small tin of tea which says Java Golden Tips, sold in Amsterdam, September the 20th, 1904. And then it has the price per pound. And actually the leaves in the jar, it's a sort of see-through jar, look just amazing. I mean, it looks in great condition. So obviously that's 117 years old. This one says on it, Kenya Tea, BEA, sample of the first consignment to London on the 16th of January 1928. Some people have been raving about this book, and it's the book of factory marks. So it says capital directors, proprietors, agents, managers and assistants, and their factory marks. So inside this book are all the factory logos, effectively, of all these tea gardens, which is just incredible. I think one of the challenges with that book is just trying to find out how to digitize it, because, just even opening it, it's very dry and crispy as a book, and the pages are kind of falling apart. So again, it's a really important document, and getting that information online, I think, will be very valuable for lots of people. Brian Reiter gave us a cabinet full of tea samples. I'm sure everybody will be familiar with the old numbered tea tins, which all have sequential numbers on them. And these tins are all full of tea samples. There's a bit on the war. We've got some boiling vessels out of a tank, because those were very famous in the Second World War and the First World War. The army used to have tea to kind of keep them cheerful, because war actually does become quite boring. Lots of scales. So the old scales from the 1930s, and H.G. Planner and Co. were the people that made those scales, and the cups, the tasting cups, and it's just a wonderful collection of a variety of many things.
Britain is a nation that has made tea the world's second most consumed beverage, and we're a nation of tea lovers. Why is it so important to protect this history, and why is it so vital?
The answer to that is multifaceted, but I'll start with talking about companies. So, many people are familiar with, obviously, I'm sort of flying the flag for family businesses. So, a family business takes things very personally. I think, a lot of the tea estates were run by people who take them very personally. Their entire careers are spent on a tea estate. When large corporations come in, it can be the case where that personal touch gets lost. And if you sort of flick to modern day, a lot of these guys running these large corporations are on massive salaries with massive bonuses and share options, and their whole aim is to basically sell lots, make lots and lots of profit. I've spoken to quite a few people and sort of said, what do you think about the history and the heritage of your company? And, there's sometimes been a bit of a blank. They haven't ever been there, or don't really know much about it. And, they're not really that interested in that historical importance of even their own business. I think what's happening is a lot of this stuff is actually being lost. When we go back to sort of the very, very old days of some of these family businesses, this stuff just literally get put in a skip and thrown away unless you have a place to keep it. It's important that we preserve things, because the chances are that some of these things actually could quite easily just be thrown away. The second part is really the part of remembering history is to get this all digitized. And that's my number one aim, is to make sure that all of this can be searched on Google. If you look up, for instance, right now, the words tea planter Assam on Google, Khoi Hay is number 1, number 2, and number 3 on that search engines. That's because we've put that information on the web. If we get all those online, it's going to be amazing. But obviously, there's a lot of work. If there's anybody out there who wants to help fund the digitization of all this stuff, it would be great to get some help along the way.
There are some fantastic facilities available at the collection. The tasting bar, the conferencing area. Who do you see using these? Are they for the general public? Is it more specifically for those in the tea trade? And how does one visit? Is it by drop-in or by appointment only?
A lot of people have said to me, you should open a tea museum in London and essentially make a profit to do these things. And obviously everybody will remember the Brahma Tea Museum in London that went crashingly bust. I'm a businessman, and these things have to have legs. Really, the first aim was to make sure these things don't get thrown away into the rubbish. In terms of usability, we're definitely imagining the tea industry using this facility. So the UK Tea and Infusion Association are already using it. So that's a big tick. We've had some of the Brook Bond family here a few weeks ago. We've had Stephen Twining here yesterday. So, we've got tea people coming through already, which is exactly what we planned it for.
intrigued by what you heard in today's podcast? Would you like to learn more from our global network of Tea Biz journalists and tea experts? Contact them directly through Subtext, a private message-based platform.
Avoid the chaos of social media and start a conversation that matters. Subtext message-based platform lets you privately ask meaningful questions of the tea experts, academics, and Tea Biz journalists reporting from the tea lands. You see their responses via SMS texts, which are sent direct to your phone. Visit our website and subscribe to Subtext to instantly connect with the most connected people in tea.
Remember to visit the Tea Biz website for more comprehensive coverage. That's www.t-biz.com. Thanks for listening. Farewell till next week.
New year, new credit scores. Chime makes it easier to build credit using your own money and on-time payments with the secured Chime Credit Builder Visa Credit Card. Use it everywhere Visa credit cards are accepted. To apply, just open a Chime checking account with a qualifying direct deposit. There's no annual fee or credit check required when applying. Get started at chime.com/build. That's chime.com/build. The Chime Credit Builder Visa Credit Card is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A. Members FDIC. Late payment may negatively impact your credit score. Results may vary.